welcome to another session with the Green World Group. My name is Fasih A Ahmed, and today's topic that we will be talking about would be work permits. So the work permit system, so to say. Now, the work permit is a safe method of work practiced in a lot of organizations where either the activity is restricted or the area is restricted. Now, what I will in detail explain to you is how this works. But getting to that, we must understand, let me simplify this in the most easiest way possible. Let's say you have a house and you want to repaint one section of that house, maybe a room. So what are you going to do? Well, you're the proud owner of that house, so you'll be hiring someone from outside to do the job, most like contractors. So when they come into the site or when they come to your house, you will show them the place. You will walk around, give them the tour of what you want and how you require to do it, and then ask him how he's going to do it and how long he's going to take and what he would require for the job. And then when you guys come to an agreement, the work will begin. And you will supervise it every now and then, come in, check up on him, and then leave, right? So that same process works. And then once that job is being done, once that job is done, you will then come back in, see everything is fine, and is the job done adequately or not? Once that is done, you will sign off the papers and you will make the payment, and that's it, right? Making sure that everything is back to normal, housekeeping is done, everything is clean. So that concept is used in the industry. And in order for us to do that job safely, we have created the work permit system. What the purpose of that work permit system is that it maintains a safe system of work by issuing, receiving, transferring, and clearing of all work permits for specific hazardous activities or hazardous areas, restricted areas, again. So there are two major reasons, or it could be both in some cases, where either the area is restricted or the activity is restricted. Now, when I say area is restricted and the activity is restricted, what do I mean from that? Well, it's very simple. If the area is restricted, that means there's something very hazardous there, right? Or there could be multiple things, multiple hazards, right? So there's too many hazards that are related. In example, maybe there's a live electrical wire going, or maybe there's some sort of energy there that can either ignite or electrocute anyone, or worse, right? And if I say activities restricted, what I mean is the activity in the sense that either you're going to be grinding, there'll be sparks emitted, there'll be cutting, and there'll be hot cutting, and so on, right? We will get into more detail of that, of course. So, quick definitions: restricted locations, right? Now the location or the activity that have been designated by the division manager or the area supervisor or from higher management that is deemed to be restricted, either the activity or the area, right? So we're talking about energized substations, we're talking about nearby energized transmission of lines and road crossings, right? Power plants, and so on. Now, what is a work permit? The work permit is actually a written agreement, or you can say a contract, that authorizes certain people to carry out specific work at a certain time or certain place, that sets out main precautions needed to complete the job safely, right? So it's a good check and balance between issuer and receiver, right? So who is the issuer, which I will explain to you actually further on. But let's talk about the core work permit here. So the work permit is designed to protect personnel working in hazardous areas or in a very special environment where certain precautions are required to take place ahead of executing the job, right? Now, so the work permit is actually a procedure that can reduce, if not eliminate. Our always primary goal is to eliminate the hazard, but most of the times we can't, so we try to reduce it and move on to the next step, which is, again, following the hierarchy of control. So we got to go step by step. So try to minimize or eliminate the incident that has the potential to cause incidences or injuries at a work site. Now, the work permit is not a JSA, which is job safety analysis. It's not, but you could have it attached to the work permit because that's a separate process on its own, right? For special work, so to say. So it's something that is very restricted, right? Or very complicated. You could have multiple work permits for a certain area because, as I mentioned before, it could be both. It could be the restricted area as well as restricted activity within the restricted area, which is much more hazardous and means much more precautions, right? So the basic principles that a work permit falls upon is that you identify the hazards and then you set controls to them. Of course, you can only set controls to something that you've identified. Then planning precautions to those procedures. And then issuing and receiving those permits, and then instructing the supervisors on the possibilities of incidents occurring from that. And if God forbids that happens, then what do you do? But not only that, how that work should be done and how that process is the core responsibility of also the supervisor during that process of work. And then monitoring those permits, because there could be multiple permits in the area. Of course, this work permit system also allows us, or the issuer itself, the owner of the area, to monitor how many permits are there. Most of the times, he won't allow 2 permits in the same area. Why? Because of it being very dangerous, and it could conflict activities that are in that area. So who is the issuer? The issuer, in simple terms, is practically the owner of the place, or someone appointed by the owner who has the best understanding of that area. So he knows already what is restricted, what is the hazards within that area, what that process is, what's going on, what's underneath the ground, what's above the ground, what's in the area, right? He's well understood about that, right? So that's what the issuer is. And as I gave you the previous example, pretty much the owner of the house is the issuer. Or if you decide to leave and you have your brother or another close or the family member within that house, then you'll tell him to, hey, watch over what's going on and give me an update. So that's practically what the issuer is, right? Appointed by the organization to take care of the area. So I've already explained this. Now, receivers, who are they? Well, receivers are the people who know the job, right? And they are usually contracted in. They could be subcontracted, or they could be people from within the organization specialized in that activity. So they know the job in and out. They're competent people who know the job. Now, this could be the supervisor, it could be the permit receiver in charge, could be the foreman itself, who will be doing the job. Right. So his job is to receive the permit, state what he requires for the job, what are the hazards that will arise from his activities that would need certain set of precautions. Now, let's talk about the different types of permits. Well, there are quite a few. Obviously, the most common ones are the hot work permit. There's cold work permits. There's work at height permits. There's electrical permits. There's an excavation permit. There are confined space permits, and then there's lifting operation permits. Again, depends on companies, but these are the basic ones. And let's talk about them in more detail and break them down. So the work permit could be activities where welding, cutting, blazing, soldering, grinding, any activity that has sufficient energy that can ignite into flammable atmospheres or combustible materials, right? So either the area has that potential danger or the activity does. And that's what the hard work permit is. Now let's go into electrical permit. Now, if you notice, I've skipped the cold work permit. The cold work permit is very simple. It's anything that could be hazardous in terms of inhalation and so on. So there's no chance of ignition, but there is maybe a lack of something that is atmospherically hazardous to us. So maybe there might be a deficiency in oxygen, maybe there might be gases in the atmosphere, and so on. Or maybe if you're doing a painting job within a room, that could be a cold work permit, right, in an isolator room. Now, let's talk about electrical permits. Usually, we would use the process of lockout tagout for electrical purposes, but the electrical permit is for electrical jobs. Now, whenever we do repair work or maintenance work on machines that are powered or generated by electricity, or powered by electricity, so to say, we would always try to process that or try to conduct work on it by using the lockout tagout process. And the lockout tagout process is a very brilliant process because it took us a lot of time to realize that people on the job would normally do as they would by starting the machine that they're assigned to and carry on. But when we're doing maintenance work and nobody's standing at the on switch and people accidentally press that, there could be a lot of danger in terms of there could be energy that that can be transmitted and cause injury and maybe fatality in most cases. So we came up with a process of lockout tagout. Again, we're going to be explaining all of this in much more detail if you decide to take the course with the Green Will Group. But yeah, so let's quickly move past. Then we have the excavation permit. Now the excavation permit is for excavating, obviously, below ground. And we have possible dangers where people can be engulfed by the soil that they've dug into. So now here's the thing: any excavation that is more than 4 feet would be considered a confined space, right? So that would require more controls and more precautions. Now, there are engineering controls to excavations where we can use shoring, we can use sloping, we can use benching, right? Again, I can explain all of these terms when we decide to take this course, the full course, obviously with the Green Will Group. So moving forward very quickly, let's go to confined space. The confined space entry permit. Now there is the confined space when we've identified something to be a confined space, and then there is the confined space entry permit, which allows us to enter into that confined space with proper training and proper induction. But the confined space, to define a confined space, we need to ensure that a confined space is something that is not occupational, or apologize for that word, but something that is some place that is not that could not be occupied by people, has a very limited entry and exit, and was not designed for human occupancy. That's what I was trying to say. So there are certain measures that we must take. We must perform gas testing. We must perform the proper identification of the hazards and the evaluations, and then apply proper controls in order to enter the confined space. All right. So moving forward, then we have the lifting permits that will allow us to lift adequately and safely to do jobs in terms of moving maybe loads from one place to another in the safest means possible. Now, this would require us to inspect the quality of the crane, the quality of the boom, quality of the slings, to ensure that we are lifting it properly and adequately, the angle of the boom. All of these factors are very crucial to ensuring the job to be done very safely. Again, a permit allows us to pre-think all of these. Why? Because we are human, we forget things. And when we see things on paper in a checklist format or a fill out format, it allows us to remember, oh, we had almost forgot about this. So this is the safe method of work that we must initiate when we are working in restricted areas or with restricted activities. Working at height, same concept applies. But not only that, there are also precautions that we must take that if something happens, how will we perform the rescue, right? So there must be an emergency rescue plan in place as well. And the work permit allows us to do that, right? So we are taking precautions. We are ensuring that the proper PPE is there being used, the proper tools are being used, the proper means of getting up there is being used as well. As you can see in this image here, there's a ladder and this man is not on the ladder. He's gone beyond the ladder. Is that safe? Right? But if that man had issued a work permit, maybe he might not be doing this, right? So there could be other alternates to the activity that we're trying to do. We could use maybe a mobile elevated working platform to get onto that height, which is safer, be permitted to do so. Not only that, we could probably use a scaffold, which is also a lot safer, which gives you much more room to work around with the tools, right, and move about. So here we are with a cold work permit. Again, this is a permit that that works with the activities to produce, well, nothing that is flammable, but yet could be hazardous in terms of inhalation, most over, or making a scaffold or erecting a scaffold, sorry, brush painting or repair work, so to say. Again, you can issue this permit in a restricted area, which has these hazards or the activity itself. So how does this work permit process work? Well, first of all, it is about issuing and accepting acceptance of the permit, meaning identifying which permit would be best suited for that area or that activity, understanding that. Not only that, performing a joint site inspection with the issuer as well as the receiver, right? They both go to the site. We need both of these people for the reason that one knows the area very well and the other one knows the activity, right? So they can join together to identify these hazards related to their line of work. Then they fill out the required documents most accurately and honestly as possible, not for just paperwork's sake. And then they have to display the permit while the work is being done so that all measures are taken appropriately. Now the validation of how long this permit is, which I will explain further on, but it depends on the company, but usually a one-day shift is 8 hours, right? And I will explain this in much more detail further. And then the suspension or cancellation of work permit. Now, this again happens when something has gone off of schedule or something has gone wrong, right? So either there has been an injury or an incident that has occurred for which the permit would be either canceled or suspended for that time. And then clearance of the work permit would be when the job is done. And both, again, issuer and receiver have come back to the site and seen everything has been adequately completed, as well as housekeeping has been done and everything's been back to normal, then yes, the final signature for closing that permit has been done. So, already explained this to you guys. Moving forward. Displaying the work permit is also a major requirement for reasons simply because if the HSE decides to walk across or so on, then they can actually inspect the work permit if what they have stated on the work permit is actually being done at the site itself in the seriousness of the restricted area or the restricted activity. Then we have the validation of work permit. I'll quickly go through. Now, 1 day work is usually 8 hours. Right? Now, depending on the severity of the job, maybe it could be a confined space where we can limitize the duration of how long we want our workers to be exposed to the hazard within it. So we can limit it down to depending on that hazard, but we can also have it for 4 hours, right? Again, but a usual duration of a work permit is for 8 hours, which is 1 shift. Right? Then the cancellation or suspension of a work permit, well, if an unsafe condition develops when either the issuer or the receiver is available at the work site, then the work permit could be suspended, meaning stop work has occurred, and either for that emergency reason, or either the whole area's plant-wide alarm maybe has gone off, or an emergency has occurred somewhere else, and everybody has been asked to evacuate. That is also suspension. So until the all clear is not given, they cannot resume the work. Right. So the work permit would be suspended for that time period. Right. The final clearance, I've already explained before, but the work permit shall be authorized by the issuer and receiver because they're the ones who first initiated the work permit. So it only is fitting that they should be the ones to conclude it, right? Again, with both parties agreeing to that the job has been completed adequately and there's nothing left behind. So once the work once the area has been returned to its pre-work condition, then yes, the work will be signed off by both parties and the permit will be closed. And with that, thank you very much. This is Fasih A Ahmed. I'll be more than happy to look forward to you guys attending the full course with the Greenwell Group. Thank you very much and have a great day.